I'm going to go ahead and click the button now.
Hello, everyone. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission, the Indiana Cultural District's Application Review Panel. I'm Lisa Abbott, Commissioner from Fishers, and today is May 5th. We're meeting virtually and streaming live online. We welcome applicants and other guests who may be listening in today, and we'd like to remind you that you're muted for this review. There's no direct contact or conversation between guests and panelists before, during, or after the panel meeting. At this time, we'd like the panelists and Indiana Arts Commission staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they're from. So I'll call out your first name, and if you would provide that brief introduction, we'll start with Abby.
Hi, everyone. My name's Abby Chapman, and I am the Indiana Main Street Outreach and Organization Manager. So I work for the state coordinating program for our Main Street in Indiana, but that's through the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, or OCRA, for the state of Indiana, and I live in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Great. Thank you so much, Abby. And Luis?
Good morning, Indiana. My name is Luis Edgardo Cotto. I'm a program manager with the Mass Cultural Council, coming to you today from the unceded lands of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, and Wampanoag peoples. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Luis. Great to have you with us. And Tahiji.
Yes, my name is Tahiji Crenshaw. I'm the Director of Housing Programs at the Community Action Program of Evansville. We're a community action agency, been there for several years, and looking forward to this review.
Great, thank you, Tahiji. Next we have Ryan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Hamlet, and I'm the Placemaking and Environmental Review Manager for the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. I live from Indianapolis, but I live just outside of Indianapolis in a town called New Palestine.
Thank you, Ryan. And Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle Mcclelland, and I am an independent consultant in community art, performing arts, history, and community engagement. I'm currently in Philadelphia, but I live in Bloomington, Indiana.
Fantastic. Thank you to all the panelists. And then from the staff at the Indiana Arts Commission, Anna, would you go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, I'm Anna Tragesser. I'm the Artist and Community Services Manager at the Indiana Arts Commission.
All right, now we'll begin the panel review. This is how the process will work. I will announce the application and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications do not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments would be great. After the first reader's finished, I'll ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We're not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives that you panelists are bringing to the table. Then after the second reader has finished, I'll open the discussion for final comments. Remember, in the interest of time, we're looking only for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. Now, if a panelist has a conflict of interest for any reason, that panelist will be temporarily removed from the discussion and placed in the virtual waiting room while the application is reviewed. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we'll ask the panel to update their scores in the online system, and note that it's common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion, and that these scores save automatically. Okay, so that's it for our procedure and how we're going to move forward. Are there any questions before we begin? All right, hearing none, let's begin. We'll start with the application from the Arts Campus Fort Wayne. And the first reader is Danielle.
Okay, I think I am successfully unmuted and talking, so let me just pull up my comments. And I just have to say first and foremost that Fort Wayne is such an impressive cultural destination. I have had the great opportunity to visit myself and see where it stands at this point, and was greatly encouraged in reading the Soaring Vision, as their cultural plan is subtitled, and was very enthusiastic about the plans that Fort Wayne has in place, the progress they're making towards those, and especially the efforts that they are making towards attempting to incorporate and more fully engage the surrounding neighborhoods into what is very much at this point, and has been historically, an enclosed campus for the arts, based on historical models of that type of development. And so my enthusiasms were about the planned building expansions within the campus, the cultural trail connectors to Headwaters Park, the activation of Freeman Square. And I believe that all of these create a really recognizable, and particularly an activated area where there's lots of people coming in and out all the time, doing lots of different things. I was also really encouraged by the list of partners, which was included in the application, which really demonstrates the ways that Arts United responds to and involves smaller organizations. It seems from this application that would be very easy for Arts United, being such the long-term leader and the curator over the campus space, to not be a team player, to not be bringing people in. And the list of partners and the descriptions of their activities really indicated that that was not the case, that they were very inclusive of other groups, and that were in many ways a convener of a variety of smaller organizations. Especially as part of the application, I was especially excited about the Fort Wayne's inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility efforts through United Front, which, as you've all read, seem to be both an acknowledgement in the application of both the original Native inhabitants of Fort Wayne and the waves of specific groups of immigrants who have come to make up the city. And I'm really excited to see Arts United prioritize its IDEA efforts above anything else, because I do believe that the main challenge of this specific area as a cultural district is the fact that it was created with the idea of being actually separate. Like, let's create a campus for the arts, where people are coming in to visit, but then leave. And I think that as our understanding and the development of the way cultural districts can really help engagement and social equity within communities, it has everything to do with creating a space where people live, work, and play all in the same area. And that specifically, because it's arranged around cultural expression, that it is an opportunity for communities to really create a vector where everyone in the community is doing that to some level. Trying to think let me see what else my notes are telling me to talk about. I strongly believe from my background that that inclusion of both living space and working space within the cultural district is really key to keeping it a sustainable ecosystem. So rather than the idea of one leading organization or one visionary sort of bringing into the space or bringing into the community this ongoing influx of arts from outside, and thus very heavily curating what happens, that the most sustainable cultural district is one in which the leadership is about convening others who can feed and develop and express their own creative work inside of that space. So the leadership of the cultural district is really the creator of an infrastructure that encourages others to fill it with content. And so economic development and tourism development, I think, really need to focus on making sure that affordable housing and short-term housing and inclusion of a whole variety of socioeconomic levels within the district happen. And Fort Wayne has the challenge that this space was not conceived in that way. It was actually conceived very differently from that. But I do see in this application a lot of really strong acknowledgement of that fact and pointed efforts to breaking down those barriers and creating the cultural district as a really dynamic sieve where things are moving in and out constantly. So I'll stop there and hear what other people have to say.
Danielle, thank you for all those insights and comments. Our second reader for this review is Luis. Luis, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Not much, because thank you, Danielle. I will highlight some great strengths, which is again, and I will agree with Danielle where I'm not super duper fond of compound campus models, because a lot of times that was the original intent, was just like, let's create this for a regional population, and then they go home and there's not a lot of just connection with an immediate community. And I was blown away with, from the get-go, the Arts United's case for the uniqueness in the history, and especially the physical, the built environment with the architecture, and then with their leadership. It is obvious that the 65-year history is just strong and serves the region well. I do think that along a hyper-local connection, like I didn't see it. That's where, if anything, I could have used more information, again, as an outsider, to see how connections with BIPOC communities are fostered. And at some point, I do think the concept of representation at a municipal level, where you only depend on the one voice, irrespective of how awesome the one voice is, and connecting, getting voices from others, you do lose the nuance of having like a smaller BIPOC group in like a big table where these decisions are being made. And that's not a critique of the application per se, but it's much what the application points to, of Arts United being at all these tables, right, as the main arts voice. But that just goes to just how incredible they've been working and stewarding this space. And I was equally excited about the future development plans and lower middle income inclusion of 25% into future housing, which is laudable, right? But yeah, I can end it there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Luis. Now we'll open it up for a discussion among the full panel. So are there any new or opposing comments? Feel free to unmute yourself and share any additional comments. And I'll give you just a moment in case you're working with the mute there. Anyone have any additional comments? All right. In that case, panelists, please finalize your scores and update your comments online. And we'll just take a pause here for a moment so that you have a minute to do that before we move on to the next one. Great discussion on this first organization, and we'll just follow this format as we go through the other organizations as well. Don't hesitate to let me know if you need more time, but the second application that we're going to review here is the Goshen Arts and Cultural District. And the first reader on this one is Abby. So Abby, would you like to share your comments, please?
Sure, and I apologize. Someone, of course, decided to start mowing outside my apartment. So let me know if my volume if I need to speak louder for any reason. Yeah, so let me pull up here, make sure I have everything.
Sure, take your time.
Thank you.
And we can hear you just fine, so no worries there.
Good. Okay, so I loved reading through Goshen's entire application. You know, as I said earlier, working in rural communities, it's just so truly inspiring to read through the ways that you know, in rural communities, arts are thriving and that's being valued. And so it was truly such a joy to get to read through this application. And so I'll kind of just start with looking at that, you know, arts and culture identity. And I think, you know, one thing I want to mention is just such strong leadership and innovation in building upon your already historic assets that are there. I love how each landmark had an event of a story of then and then now, how that looks, and that connection, and how that was such a huge part of your cultural district is really valuing those historic assets and being able to tell those stories. So I just wanted to mention that. I also, you know, I did see that there was a lot of assets in varying categories in terms of the kinds of arts and culture and programming you have in the community. But I would say, you know, making sure you're marketing those to the community of when do these events take place? Do you have those events going on in the evenings, during the day, in the morning? You know, really making sure you're communicating that. Looking at your cultural development and leadership, I mean, just was truly blown away. And honestly, it was all the pieces of the types of programming that you're doing to empower residents and visitors, you know, looking at our artists active in your community. This was all so clearly shown, but also, again, really did show your leadership and innovation. I appreciated how the variety of opportunity in various art mediums for people to be educated on was available. I think that I think this was mentioned some in the application, but I think, you know, Goshen, again, it being a rural community, you face different challenges. And I think because of that, you have created such a supported arts experience and education, which is truly powerful, and will allow your residents to be able to connect into that. And again, various art mediums. So I was really impressed by that. And I think that does make you a leader in the state because of that. I was also just amazed, again, at that active artist, how many active artists you had in the community. But also just one of the best roles that I think an arts organization can play is their connection across the community and various organizations. And I think you showed that clearly through your partnerships, and showing that the arts can be supported, sustained, and accessed well in your community. And so, as I was, looking through this, you're thinking about things like, is there strong potential housing for artists? And that was demonstrated. And, is there strong municipal relationships? And that was demonstrated. And so truly just so much leadership and innovation in that. When looking at things like community development, you had a very strong community plan that integrated all the needs and missing gaps of the community that ultimately your cultural district could support, and all of the residents. So that I really appreciated the depth and the detail there. And I think that, in terms of kind of that diversity and inclusion, there were times, in the application where I think it was hard to necessarily see where maybe diverse voices were speaking into any decisions. But I do appreciate that, there was a survey that was put out in multiple languages to meet the needs in your community and that people had access to that. But continuing to find ways of how do we provide seats at the table for everyone to come and be a part of major decisions. And so, making sure that that's something that you're focusing on, but also something that's communicated. And so even something like having a translator at meetings or community meetings, so that you can have board members or artists who have different backgrounds or don't speak English, that they're able to come and understand what's happening and be a part of that and have their voice heard. Thinking through things like economic development and tourism development, really a lot of leadership and innovation in this area. Just such strong reuse. I think I already said this earlier, but reuse and activation of your historic buildings and preservation initiatives. The list that you provided, it just shows that, again, you're a leader in the state. Speaking from someone who sees a lot of rural communities, that kind of reactivation and preservation work, specifically for the arts, is hard. And it's a really hard role and hard to get done. And so to see that done so well, just shows what a leader you guys all are. So I think that was something that really stuck out to me. And then overall, just your management and planning for your cultural district was very strong. You clearly have the community support and long-term sustainability in place. And as someone who works in community development, that's something I know that I'm always working with communities on. And so just your overall work plans are very impressive and appreciated, and the survey data that was included in that. So I'll leave my comments at that, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Abby. And our second reader for the Goshen Arts and Cultural District application is Tahiji. So Tahiji, would you give us your comments, please?
Yes, I pretty much agree with Abby on most of the areas of this particular application. I really thought a very innovative format was the No More Children in Cages. The idea you could take something that's so devastating to a particular group of people and create it into an art event to bring understanding was very innovative. The idea of bringing more diverse populations, I think, to their committee would be more, would help the application, excuse me, as well as coming up with ideas, specific details on how to diversify the local economy. What methods will be utilized to recruit specific skilled and competitive workforce? What methods could be utilized to assist potential small businesses among diverse populations? I think also would have helped this application as well. So that particular district can grow, not only with visitors and tourists, but also with the people that live within that community, and keep it more inclusive, inviting more people to that particular area. Those are the aspects that really caught my eye during the review. But I pretty much agree with Abby on everything, just about.
All right, thank you for those perspectives from both of you. And now I'll open it up for discussion among the full panel. Are there any new or opposing comments?
I can add something real quick. And Ryan, I saw you unmute also. I'm happy to yield to you. Cool. Just regarding the application on the history piece, that was one place where I feel the application could have gone deeper and gone further back into history. It was all very recent, and for me, that points to just like, trying to get those stories just because it exists, right? Like the current awesomeness that's there, because I love this application, has to be from, more than 20, 30, or even the 50s years ago. And so so I felt that area, I was itching for that after I hit the uniqueness. But just that.
Great, thank you, Luis. Ryan, did you have some comments to add as well?
I did, and I don't necessarily want to parrot other comments made already, but one of the things that I took away from the application was it mentioned a couple times the amounts of non-English speaker residents that kind of came in the 90s. And I would have liked to see a little bit more information about how they're being included in the arts district, or if not only their input, but those are cultures that have their own arts traditions and things, and how maybe those are being fostered or supported throughout the community as well. So it's a little bit maybe kind of similar to what some of the other comments were, but that was the kind of major takeaway that I had from the application. But beyond that, they're doing fantastic things there. We've got a pretty awesome, IC's got a pretty awesome low-income artist facility there named the Hawks. And so they're doing cool things there in Goshen, I'm sorry.
All right.
I
Great.
also wanted to say really briefly that one of the notes that I made was that it seemed like there was more possibility for Goshen to seek funding on a regional or national level, especially given the kind of unique situation that they are in, with such a large new influx of people from a different background than the historical residents of their community, that they're a small community whose demographics have shifted really rapidly, and that they are consciously trying to figure out, how do we make the most of this new integration? What do we do with this enriching of our community? And that there may be, I know, taking the step of seeking out cultural district status is, of course, one of the steps to do that. But how might you seek funding specifically for the engagement of the new Latino residents in your community? Like, what might be out there to fund that? And so I would really encourage Goshen, no matter where your application goes, to really look at that possibility and see what can be done. Because I know as a potential visitor, I would be very enthusiastic about coming into a small town with a rich amount of artistic and creative activity to take place in, especially if that's exposing me to Latino culture in a way that I don't have access to, readily in the middle of Indiana very often. So start looking for other funding sources as well to start new and more innovative programs with that community, especially.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Appreciate all of the discussion here. Very rich discussion on these applications, and appreciate everyone weighing in. So now, panelists, if you'll please finalize your scores for the Goshen Arts and Cultural district and update your online comments. And we'll take just a moment here to give you some time to do that. It's very possible that with this discussion among the panel that you may want to update some things, and so we'll take a moment. And at this point, we're halfway through our review process. I'll just kind of take a pulse with our panelists and see how everybody is doing. We have the option of taking a 5-minute break here if that would be helpful. So if that's appealing to you, would you please indicate by a thumbs up, either digitally or the old-fashioned way? Okay, terrific. All right, let's pause here for just a 5-minute break, enable everyone to regroup a little bit. I have 12:02 Eastern time on my clock, so we'll regroup here at 12:07. All right, so if everyone can just turn off their cameras, and we'll meet you back here in just a few moments. Thank you. All right, it is 12:07 Eastern Time, and I'll give our panelists a moment to get back on camera if they have that capability. Just welcoming everyone back to this really robust, rich conversation as we're reviewing these applications from cultural districts. We've reviewed the Arts Campus, Fort Wayne, as well as the Goshen Arts and Cultural District. And we'll move on to the next one. You'll remember at the top of the meeting, I mentioned that if there's any conflict of interest, those panelists will be placed in a digital waiting room. And for this next application on the Kokomo Cultural District, Abby and Ryan will be in that virtual waiting space. So I'll pause just a moment to make sure that everyone is where they need to be. And we're in good shape there. All right, we're ready to move on then to the Kokomo Cultural District review. And Luis, you are our first reader on that one. If you'll go ahead with your comments, please.
Yeah, definitely. Wonderful application. I have to say that the strength here is the organization and with the Greater Kokomo Economic Development Alliance, and hence those areas were really good to see, right? But I have to say my one comeback regarding the framing of the district was interesting, because there are so many strengths in the district, particularly when you look at the makerspace, the history with the automobile, and the wonderful built environment with the sculptures and the murals. I sensed some confusion in the way to frame that, because there's so much to work with. Like I'll just say that I was blown away when I clicked on the global link to go to the website provided and saw all this incredible built sculpture, and I did not get that sense from the narrative. So I say that to say that there's definitely a space to work there with the narrative regarding what I feel is super unique with the history of the automobile, but it not mentioned in uniqueness as much. Where the focus was on the makerspace element, and so that was huge, right? Because then I ended up having to like draw from what I seen from what was linked to, and also what was downloaded. The other space is a room for improvement, was just like the partnerships and their and I'm trying to get to that, excuse me for 1 second.
Sure, take your time.
Yeah. So when asked about partners with others to identify resources for artists, there was a list of active cultural assets that did